afternoon, perhaps with 1 or 2 showers. However, most places should stay dry and warm. A bright and warm day in the northeast too, with some sunny spells. It could be cloudier at times along the coast of Northumberland. There'll be a touch of sunshine in eastern Scotland, where it'll feel pleasantly warm, but skies will be cloudier in the west. The cloud could bring a few spots of drizzle at times. Thicker cloud in Northern Ireland will bring some heavy showers this afternoon. The heavy downpours could bring hail and a few rumbles of thunder too. Showers will gradually ease this evening, leaving a dry end to the day for most and a mild evening too. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Alankona, and former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Opik. That's all we could get because it's the bank holiday. Anyway, before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 4. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Ukraine says street battles are ongoing in the besieged city of Mariupol as several powerful explosions hit the capital Kiev and its surrounding areas overnight. Russia says it's increasing its missile strikes after the sinking of one of its warships. Ukrainian forces claim the Moskva sank after they hit it with missiles on Wednesday. The Kremlin insists it went down after an explosion on board, though. Former British Army officer Stuart Crawford told GB News the loss of the vessel is significant.
But however it happened, it is a major blow for prestige, and these things resonate through population. It will be a morale boost for Ukraine. I think we in the West have just got to keep pressing to deliver the sort of weapons that they need to defend their territory and also eventually to take back territory which has been lost.
Downing Street says asylum seekers who've arrived in the UK illegally could be sent to Rwanda within 6 weeks. The government is planning to fly people to the East African country to have their asylum claims processed there. The Prime Minister says the £120 million deal will serve as a considerable deterrent to migrants attempting to cross the Channel. Immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal says the scheme is expensive and unworkable.
Last year, Australia processed 249 people offshore. It cost them £461 million, so UK pounds. If we're thinking, and the expectations are now, in the eyes of the British public, oh, this is great, there's going to be 20,000 people sent to Rwanda, their figures just don't make sense at all. £120 million isn't going to cut it.
Hundreds of Palestinians have been detained after clashes with Israeli police at one of Jerusalem's holiest sites. Officers tried to disperse a large crowd of people at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, also known as Temple Mount. Israeli authorities say groups were throwing rocks at the compound after morning prayer. At least 150 people have been injured. The clashes come as Christians, Jews and Muslims prepare to celebrate Easter, Passover and Ramadan. Residents in Shanghai have clashed with police over new coronavirus policies. It's being reported residents have protested after being told to immediately leave their apartment building so the government can use it as a COVID isolation facility. Footage shows people kneeling and even lying down in front of police wearing hazmat suits, with some being dragged away. Latest figures show there are 23,000 infections in Shanghai. Dozens of climate change protesters have been charged after 3 oil terminals were blocked today. Activists from Just Stop Oil blocked roads and climbed on oil tankers in Staffordshire and Essex. The group, who are linked to Extinction Rebellion, is demanding the government stops new oil and gas projects. One campaigner says the government aren't doing enough.
And obviously we don't do this lightly. We've tried everything else. We've literally done everything we possibly could to get this message across. And it's not a message, it's a cry for help. It's an emergency. And we need to be acting like it's an emergency. The UN says it's a code red for humanity, and the government are just failing.
A man has been charged after the bodies of 2 people were found at separate addresses in Scotland. The body of 51-year-old Paul Duffy was discovered on Sunday in Coatbridge, North Lanarkshire. Officers also found the body of 26-year-old Emma Bailey in a nearby property 2 days later. A 46-year-old man will appear in connection with the deaths at Airdrie Sheriff Court tomorrow. And England's Test cricket captain Joe Root says stepping down from the role is the most challenging decision of his career. Root holds the record for the highest number of Test match wins as captain since he took on the role in 2017, but he's chosen to leave after 2 series defeats against the West Indies last month and Australia in the winter. Vice-captain Ben Stokes has paid tribute, though, saying Root has been a privilege to play with. Well, you're up to date. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's return to Nana Akua.
It's 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, where did we leave it last time? Oh, yeah. Meghan Markle was getting involved in US politics, writing letters, which she clearly loves doing. Well, the happy couple have decided to grace us with their presence once again on their way to Holland for the Invictus Games. The last time Meghan saw the Queen was about 2 years ago, before that embarrassing interview with Oprah Winfrey, where they made up a load of stuff. Frankly, a lot of it didn't make any sense. The less said about that, the better. Harry, however, came back for Prince Philip's funeral. After kicking up a stink in their usual fashion when refused security to travel to the UK, which he offered to pay for. You aren't entitled to it if you're not a working royal, a choice which they themselves made. They decided to stop en route to see the Queen. How very magnanimous. As they should. They haven't, however, allowed her to meet the latest addition to their family in person, Lilibet, who is named after the Queen, a nickname that was given her by Prince Philip, whose memorial service they failed to attend. So after all the kerfuffle about royal security, Prince Harry, currently entangled with the High Court regarding this, they were able to stop in the UK en route to the Netherlands incognito to see her in any case. And the only reason it appeared we realised that they were here was because they were spotted in Windsor by a coachload of people in a very public setting where they made themselves visible. And it begs the question, if you're so worried about privacy and security, why hang around a public event? One attendee said, "It was quite the sight. We knew we might see Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall at the ceremony, but we never believed that we would bump into Harry and Meghan." Why, if they could travel here in secret and unannounced, only being spotted because they chose to be out in the open where they were likely to be seen, why did they need security? Clearly they can get around without anyone even noticing or, more to the point, caring. I mean, we don't even know if they flew commercially or via private jet. Although, knowing these two, it's probably the latter. So why all this hoo-ha? They also don't appear to have major protection in the Netherlands. It's so tiring following the nonsense of these two. Harry is currently suing the Mail on Sunday over an article he claimed is defamatory, causing him substantial hurt, embarrassment and distress. Well, there are authorities on that one. Pot, kettle. If I could sue everyone who caused me substantial hurt, I'd be a very rich woman. Look, you wanted privacy. You can clearly get it. So clear off. Sorry. We're back in vision, are we? Before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Each Friday at 5, I put the focus on a particular guest or subject matter. Today, we'll be discussing the government's controversial plans to send some migrants who cross the channel to Rwanda to be processed. Boris Johnson said that the £120 million scheme would save countless lives from human trafficking. He's keen to get the scheme running within weeks. But refugee organisations have criticised the plan as cruel. The Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you care about the local council elections in May? Pollsters suggest that the Conservatives could lose more than 800 seats at next month's local election, with frustrations over Partygate, Rishi Sunak's tax status and, of course, the cost of living crisis. But with the average turnout across England, Scotland and Wales below 40% in local elections, I'm asking you, do you care about them? And we'll discuss a huge breakthrough when it comes to spotting the early risks of ovarian cancer. Find out how a simple test could make a huge difference to thousands of women across the UK. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet me @gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my wonderful panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and also co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Hello and welcome, you two reprobates. Thanks for joining me.
You could guess.
It is literally.
Good Friday.
It is, you know, but everyone's doing other stuff, so at least I've got you two. No, I'm joking. Lovely to see you, of course. Right, so let's talk Meghan and Harry. I know, look, I have avoided doing monologues on them because, frankly, I just don't want to give them the oxygen of any publicity, and I'm a little bit bored. But I just thought, well, I'll just dip my toe in the water on this one. Why not? What do you think?
I think that Meghan has driven Harry out of the royal family. My, sadly now late agent, Terry Mills, who died of COVID actually, he said it would be no good for the royal family if Meghan Markle came in, and he pretty much called it just about right. Now, do I really care? I only care to the extent that it harms the royal family. I'm a massive royalist, and I don't think she's done any good for it. But the point that you made in your monologue is true. If they wanted to do it in secret, why not land at RAF Northolt, go in a dark car?
Well, they might have done, we don't know.
Yeah, but then they decided to announce the fact they were here by walking around. Now, they didn't have to do that. That's the point you make.
Yeah.
They could have come here and they could have left in secrecy, but instead they wanted to do the big I am. And I don't think that just doesn't sit comfortably to me.
Albie, what do you think?
Have they done the big I am? I'm not sure they have done the big I am. They came here secretly. The only reason why they were seen is because they were seen on the grounds of Windsor Castle, and the onlookers were surprised that they saw them. I think they did do it incognito.
No, but I'm just going to stop you there. There was a big event that was happening, and they went and they were seen. So it was like a service that was happening, and so it wasn't like if there's a big service with a load of people coming to that service and attending it, if you pop up around that time when everyone's there, they will see.
But is that the big I am? The big I am.
I don't think it's the big I am,
well,
but I still think that
this is my point. I don't think it's the big I am.
Yeah.
Look, I think the situation with Meghan and Harry and the royal family is extremely sad. I was disappointed to see that they couldn't make the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral service. I think that was really sad. I also would like the Queen to meet Lilibet and Archie.
That would be lovely.
Properly,
yes, that would be.
You know, before she leaves us. I hope that's in a very long time, but she's a very old monarch. And I think the entire situation it's very sad.
Well, but it's not that they couldn't. They didn't. They chose not to. It's a bigger deal for them to go to the Games, which I have to say the investigative is actually a very good thing. But that's a bigger deal. I think the Queen might have maybe just preferred if they'd paid homage to Prince Philip. And they decided not to do it.
Well,
I don't accept the point that you're making, that they had to go into the public domain. They moan, just like Nana said, they moan about privacy and then they choose to publicise the fact they're here.
Look, but they haven't publicised it. The media's publicised it. We're talking about it and publicising it here. If people didn't care about Harry and Meghan, it wouldn't have been in the media. All I'm saying is that the situation is very sad. I don't think they've come here and made the big I am at all.
Well, but the thing is, though, people are not interested in potentially their situation, but I think we all care about the Queen. See, that's what it is. And it feels to me somewhat, that's just in my view, it seems quite cruel that you've come. That's great. I'm glad you've finally graced us with your presence and arrived in the UK and said hello to the Queen. I mean, she's very old. She was very ill with COVID, or she wasn't ridiculously ill, but it seems that she's lost a lot of her mobility after it. And it would just seem like a nice thing if you could at least introduce her grandchild that you've named after her, if at all possible. And if you can do this in secret, then why can't you do all that? You're just choosing to do things that, and as an observer, I just think it just seems cruel and unkind.
I agree. I think their decision-making over the past 2 years has definitely been poor, in my opinion. And initially, I was a really big supporter of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex when they first got married and first got together. And I've been really disappointed in the way that they have behaved over the past 2 years. And I wish the situation would get better, but unfortunately, I don't see that happening.
It won't. And Terry, once again, thinks that once Harry ceases to be useful, then there could be strains in that relationship. I don't know. I don't know them personally. Terry knew them better. But when it comes down to it, lots of families have problem kids. But if you are in the royal family, I kind of think that you've got to have some respect for that duty. Or if you don't, then don't moan about the fact that you don't get all the privileges. You can't have it both ways. And I think that basically Harry, perhaps through Meghan's institution, has said, oh, well, I don't want to be a royal, but I want to be treated like one, and that doesn't feel comfortable.
Well, I'm inclined, and I know it's unusual of me to do this, but I'm not going to blame it all on Meghan. It's not all her fault. It's the two of them together. And I just think that if you're going to be, if you're going to be making decisions like that, you have to understand the implications of it. You want privacy, you can have privacy, and you can clearly buy privacy because you can go on private jets. We don't even know whether you're here or not. You can go into castles and everything else, and we won't even see you. And you could have gone on with your onward journey. Instead, you are there now at a sort of public event where people are seeing you, you're waving at people and everything. That's all very lovely, but at the back of my mind is, well, why couldn't you maybe at some point brought Lilibet to meet the Queen and just
Come on, Albie, apologist for Meghan. Go on. How do you answer that?
I'm not an apologist for Meghan at all. I've already said I wish that Harry and Meghan had introduced Lilibet and Archie to the Queen and the royal family properly. I'm not a Harry and Meghan apologist. I've said I'm disappointed in their behaviour. My only point is that I have a contention with you is that you said they came over here and made the big I am, and they haven't.
OK, that's my view. If I didn't want people to know, if I was a former member of the royal family, if I didn't want people to know, I'd say I wouldn't walk around in front of loads of people. Loads of tourists who've got cameras who can take the pictures.
Have we seen a picture of it?
Well, I haven't looked at the pictures if there were any. But
I don't think a picture's been published of them actually being in the UK.
Maybe people are scared to publish the picture because of what happens. I mean, they're quite litigious, aren't they? They like trying to sue people. So that might be potentially why the picture isn't anywhere to be seen if it was anywhere.
But do you deny that they went into a public place?
I don't deny that.
Pretty sure they did.
That's what's happened and that's what's been reported. Where we disagree is that I don't think they've come over here and made a big I am, and you do. Well, that's fine.
But I believe that they could come here and do their thing and we wouldn't even need to know, and I would be much happier with that. Right.
Yeah.
Right, well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, still to come, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, do you care about the council elections in May? Now, there's warnings from pollsters that the Conservatives could take a hit in the local elections next month, with suggestions that they could lose up to 800 council seats. But with the average turnout across England, Wales and Scotland below 40% in local elections, I'm asking you, do you actually care about them? Send me your thoughts. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet at GBNews. Currently, we have a poll up asking that very question. Do you care about the council elections in May? Cast your vote now, and I'll be speaking to Labour councillor and a Conservative next. But first, let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry for many, with some sunshine, but cloudier in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Skies are likely to be cloudy across parts of Devon and Cornwall this afternoon, with some drizzle and sea fog in the west. Further east, it'll be brighter with some warm, sunny spells. The brightness extends into southeast England, where there'll be plenty of sunny spells this afternoon, feeling warm in the sunshine with a high of 23 Celsius in London today. It's a cloudier picture for much of Wales, with some patchy drizzle over the hills. The sunshine could break through at times in the east, where it'll feel warm. After a bright start in northwest England, a little cloud will bubble up this afternoon, perhaps with 1 or 2 showers. However, most places should stay dry and warm. A bright and warm day in the northeast too, with some sunny spells. It could be cloudier at times along the coast of Northumberland. There'll be a touch of sunshine in eastern Scotland, where it'll feel pleasantly warm, but skies will be cloudier in the west. The cloud could bring a few spots of drizzle at times. Thicker cloud in Northern Ireland will bring some heavy showers this afternoon. The heavy downpours could bring hail and a few rumbles of thunder too. Showers will gradually ease this evening, leaving a dry end to the day for most and a mild evening too. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable, and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So it's coming up to 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're watching GB News, or you might be listening on digital radio. Right, I'm still with my panel. Co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing how Harry and Meghan have been to meet the Queen in person for the first time since 2020. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Anne says, your summary of Harry and Meghan. Wow, just fantastic. All right, thank you. Clive says Harry should not have been allowed back in the country. I couldn't care less about him and Meghan. They're irrelevant and pointless, and I'm a royalist. Yes, I'm a royalist as well, exactly. And Alan says, I love to see Harry and Meghan, and I'm proud of them. Some people talk a load of rubbish about them. Well, yeah, but, you know, whatever. We can all talk rubbish. It's quite good fun. Right, so now it's time for the Great British Debate. I'm asking, do you care about the council elections in May? There's suggestions that the Conservatives could lose up to 800 seats in the local elections next month. And pollsters, electoral calculus and Find Out Now are forecasting a 5% swing from the Tories to the Labour on the 5th of May. And if a similar result was seen in the general election, it would leave Labour as the largest party in Parliament, 15 MPs short of an overall majority. Arguably a worrying sign for the current government and local councillors ahead of voters going to the polls next month. But with the average turnout at these local elections in England, Scotland and Wales less than 40%, I'm asking, do you actually care about the council elections in May? I'm joined now by the leader of Walsall Council, Councillor Mike Bird. Mike, thank you for joining us. Now, how worried are you that people aren't bothered about these local elections?
Well, I'm not bothered at all, really. I mean, I just say to people they need to vote locally and not on national politics. What goes down in Westminster isn't really what controls your local council, except the money we get from government grant.
So what's your premonition then in terms of the local elections? Do you think that what is happening nationally will affect local issues, or do you think people will actually vote for the councillors themselves?
I think, like all elections, they are certainly from where I am very unpredictable. In Walsall Council, I'm pretty confident we'll still be in control of that council, but there are some areas around the country that sadly we will lose control to other parties. But that's what elections are all about. My only message to people is get out and vote. You know, I get really angry when people start moaning after an election. The first thing I do is look at the marked register. Did they go out to vote? And if they didn't, then quite honestly, you know, you be careful what you wish for. That's what I say.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, though. Well, so what are people saying at the door when you come to the door, and you know, when the councillors are going around? Are they talking much about things like Partygate and Rishi Sunak and that sort of thing?
No, they're not. You know, in actual fact, those people who are kicking off about Partygate, as it's been called, don't normally are Conservative voters. I think there's more worry about what's going on in Ukraine, the cost of living that's creating. And on top of that, you know, my first question to people, have you had a vaccine? Oh, yeah, I've had 2, 3 or 4. Well, without the Conservative government, you wouldn't have had that, because the foresight for Boris Johnson actually meant that the pandemic came to an end far sooner than one would have expected. And to be fair, it's been a bloody difficult time, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Well, it has been a very difficult time, and apologise for any swears there. Obviously, it's not quite at the watershed, but we'll let you get away with that. So, in summary then, do you think people actually care that much about their local council and who's running it?
But they do indeed, you know, because that's where the local services come from. We have, obviously, statutory obligations for adult social care and indeed for children's services. And therefore, those are the things that do affect a majority of the Conservative voters are questioning how they're going to manage and actually what support we can offer to get them through the crisis they're now facing. During the pandemic, we found 2,000 people that were living in isolation. We've now rectified that, but at the end of the day, I think that certainly from a financial point of view, it is a proven track record. Conservatives handle finances far better than Labour.
Well, listen, Councillor Mike Bird, thank you very much for talking to us. You're the leader of Walsall Council, a Conservative council at that. Right, so I'm also now joined by a Labour councillor, Nick Small, who represents Central Liverpool. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. Now, is this poll good news for Labour councils, do you think?
Well, I think it is, and I think what one thing I'd agree with Mike on is that local government does matter, local services do matter, and I think people should be looking at what the different parties, what different councillors are saying locally, what they'll do in their local authority area, because local services are important, but you can't completely decouple it from what's happening in Westminster, in Liverpool, and in lots of other places. We've been hit hard by Tory austerity. We've had a 65% cut in our controllable budget in the last decade because of a Tory government, because of Tory austerity. So, you can't ignore completely what's happening in Westminster. And what I'm hearing on the doorstep, we haven't got elections in Liverpool, but I'm out and about in neighbouring areas, and what I'm hearing very clearly on the doorstep is about the cost of living crisis, about the role that this government has played in the cost of living crisis. What we're hearing is Partygate and the way that it's one rule for them, another rule for everyone else. We've all abided by the rules over COVID, and we've all done the right thing, but it seems that ministers haven't done that, and people are angry. People are very, very angry about these things.
So how closely do you think that these local council elections will be linked to the national picture?
Well, I think they will be linked, because you can't, separate what's happening locally from what's happening in central government. And I think, this is an issue that, the people are very, very concerned about. And I think people, are angry, and they want to show their anger against this government. And, you can't get away from that. And I think, the Tories are going to have a very bad set of elections, and, deservedly so, many of us would say.
Are you expecting a big turnout?
I don't know if the turnout's going to be any different from what it's been previously in local elections. It isn't as high as in general elections, but then the coverage isn't as big as the coverage is in general elections. The general election, everyone talks about it for 6 weeks before. It's all over the newspapers, it's all over the television, it's all over the internet, and it's a little bit different with local elections, and it always has been. But I think there will be a respectable turnout, and I think what's important here is people need to make a decision about how well local services are, but also about how national government, how central government is impacting on them locally. And it is a referendum on this government as well. It is about, have the government done all that they can to get us out the pandemic, to get things back to normal? Have they done all they should have done around the cost of living crisis? I'd argue that they haven't, and I'd argue that they don't deserve our vote, they don't deserve our support.
OK, well, listen, thank you very much, Councillor Nick Small, the Councillor for Central Liverpool. He's from the Labour side of things. Thank you very much. Right, so it's the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you care about the council elections in May? Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Paul says, God, yes, I want Labour out of Birmingham. Ian says, I care in terms of who will do the best job for the area. That means I don't vote based on party lines or national politics in local elections. I look at track record and policy. Sean says the Tories need a taste of the cost of living crisis. I like it. Well, listen, keep your thoughts coming. We'll be discussing that and more. If you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue the Great British Debate, and I'm asking, do you care about the council elections in May? You'll hear the thoughts from my panel, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Abi Amankona, and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you. It's 4:30. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Ukraine says street battles are ongoing in the besieged city of Mariupol as several powerful explosions hit the capital Kiev and its surrounding areas overnight. Russia says it's increasing its missile strikes after the sinking of one of its warships. Ukrainian forces claim the Moskva sank after they hit it with missiles on Wednesday. The Kremlin insists it went down after an explosion on board, though. Hundreds of Palestinians have been detained after clashes with Israeli police at one of Jerusalem's holiest sites. Officers tried to disperse a large crowd of people at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, also known as Temple Mount. Israeli authorities say groups were throwing rocks at the compound after morning prayer. At least 150 people have been injured. The clashes come as Christians, Jews and Muslims prepare to celebrate Easter, Passover and Ramadan. A teaching union is warning that a retention crisis is imminent unless teachers are given a significant pay rise. A survey by the National Association of Teachers shows 7 in 10 have considered leaving their job over the past year if pay doesn't improve. Dozens of climate change protesters have been charged after 3 oil terminals were blocked today. Activists from Just Stop Oil blocked roads and climbed on oil tankers in Staffordshire and Essex. The group, who are linked to Extinction Rebellion, are demanding the government stops new oil and gas projects. One campaigner says the government just isn't doing enough. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Stay with us. Nana will be back in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So 35 minutes after 4 o'clock, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's back to our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you care about the council elections in May? Well, the pollsters suggest that the Conservative Party could lose up to 800 council seats in the next month's local elections. Electoral Calculus and Find Out Now are forecasting a 5% swing from the Tories to the Labour Party on the 5th of May. A very similar swing in a general election could see the Labour Party and Sir Keir Starmer become Prime Minister. But with an average turnout of less than 40% in England, Scotland and Wales in local council elections, I'm asking, do you even care there? Right, so let's see what my panel think of this. I'm joined by former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and also co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. But I'm going to come to you, Lembit, straight away, as an ex-sort of Liberal Democrat MP.
Sort of.
Yes,
I was.
A party who couldn't decide. Do you know, actually, the most frustrating thing for me about the Liberal Democrats was when there were the elections and everything, it was the fact that some banners were orange, others were yellow. I mean, they couldn't even make up their mind. There was not one consistent colour, and I found that extremely infuriating. Sorry, go on.
That's what really mattered to you,
because
the colour.
Because nothing they had to say was of interest. Well,
anyway. You know what, actually, in a sense, That's exactly what I was going to say in a slightly different way. Not about the Lib Dems, but about local elections. You were asking whether national issues should be the determinant on how you vote locally. As you said, most people don't vote at all. But, you know, I think 40% is not a bad turnout. The way I experienced, I used to be a councillor myself for 5 years up in Newcastle upon Tyne, and I had a big majority because people thought that I was doing an okay job. They actually probably think I was a better councillor than I was an MP. But if I had been anonymous, then the vote would have been about the national issues. So unless you imprint your mark in your ward, in your local area, then people will just vote, if they vote at all, according to what they feel about Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer and so on. What I find really interesting, though, about this is Keir Starmer's only got a 5% swing. You know, I think he's a pretty pathetic leader of the opposition. If Tony Blair, whether you like him or not now, if Tony Blair had been in that position, he would be rinsing the Tories, absolutely destroying the Conservatives.
I think even if Tony Blair came back, and I don't want him to because I'm sick of him, but if he did come back, I think he could probably do a better job. I mean, he'd probably be more popular already than Keir Starmer.
Yeah, but it's interesting, though, I suspect that, and I know a lot of Conservatives, and not as many as Albie probably, but...
You might know more.
But maybe.
How many do you know, Albie? Just so who knows the most.
I know thousands. What about
you? I know millions.
Oh, well, I know billions. Trillions. I know trillions. I
okay,
win.
well, then you win. When it comes down to it, I think that a lot of people don't feel that strongly about Partygate. That's the kind of thing they talk about in Kensington and in Parliament. Boris is regarded as a bit of a lad. And people are, well, of course, he'll have sort of parties. But when it comes down to it, my feeling is that even if they lose 800 seats, it's about a 12% loss. It's not very much. I mean, a really bad night is like losing 2,000 seats.
Yeah.
So that's a fairly small swing.
Well, Nick seemed to think that people were more concerned where he is about Partygate and do as I say, not as. Well, I'm just saying that's what he said, although the Conservative one didn't seem to say that, did he? But then that's all Keir Starmer is saying. I heard him talking, and I just thought, actually telling Boris off for the fact that they're actually focusing on policy, like the immigration policy, which I'm glad they're finally doing something about. But we will talk about that. I'm looking forward to that at 5 o'clock. Albie.
I think on the local elections, Lembert's absolutely right. The 800 councillor seat loss, obviously it's not good news for the Conservatives, and an 800 seat gain for Labour is good news for Labour. But actually the figure that really matters is a number of councils that will be under Conservative control and under Labour control. And actually I think the same poll predicted that the Conservatives would only actually lose a handful of councils in terms of the councils that they control, and Labour would gain 20, but mostly from councils which aren't under majority control at the moment. So those are really the actual important figures. And you'd think that under the current political climate, that the Tories would do much worse and that Labour would do much better. And Lembert's absolutely right to say that really we would be expecting something like 1,000, 2,000 councillor seat losses would be a bad night for the Tories and maybe influence whether or not any letters go in to the 1922 committee. But I don't think, on current predictions, anything's really going to change.
My old party, the Lib Dems, will probably make gains because there are many places where they're more palatable to former Conservative voters. So I think possibly the Lib Dems will have the best night. Why does any of this matter? Because the councillors are the workforce. They're the army that wins you the...
They're like the workers.
Yeah, the worker bees, if you like. Yeah. They deliver the leaflets and they tend to convert big local success into parliamentary seats. And that's where the big money is.
Do you think... I think that actually what you said was interesting for once.
Well, thank you very much, Nana. Happy Easter to you.
But the protest vote, because I think that actually the Liberal Democrats do, if anyone will gain it will be them. Because people, I know Keir Starmer isn't that popular. We all know that, because he'd be much further ahead. The Conservative Party have made some very embarrassing guffaws on a national level. So people will think, well, who can we go in between without causing any real damage or any real commitment to, without damaging the overall national picture? They'll vote Liberal Democrats to alleviate their anger. Then once they've done that, they'll then return to the Conservative Party. I don't think Conservatives will lose anything at all.
I agree, but actually the same poll predicts that the Liberal Democrats will only gain one council. So you would expect in this kind of election the Lib Dems to do much better because of exactly the reason that Tories who protest vote will vote for the Liberal Democrats. But that doesn't seem to be...
Well, they won't get enough. They won't get enough to actually get the seat, though.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
I would say the Lib Dems will win. I'm going to make a guess here. 400 seats. It would be quite a good recovery.
Out of how many?
They've got 2,500 at the moment,
right.
So that would be, wouldn't be about a 15% increase. The Tories have about 7,500. How Anaraki am I? They've got about 7,500, so it's about 12% loss. And let's assume that then the Labour Party pick up, say, 500-600. It's not a great night. When it comes down to it, Boris has messed up big time. As far as I'm concerned, technically he should resign because he's broken the
No,
ministerial
but you lost
code.
the bet, Lambert.
I've lost the bet, and I was just about to admit, I thought
April Fool's Day.
I thought he would be gone by now.
No.
And he's unsinkable by the looks of things. Why? Because Keir Starmer cannot kick the ball to the back of the net. Let's see what he does on the 5th of May.
We'll see, we'll see. Right, well, this show is nothing without you and, of course, your views. Let's welcome our great British voice, your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Jonathan Jones is from Cornwall. We've gone off there. Now, Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. Jonathan, so what do you care about these local council elections? Do they work for you?
Well, it's only when we had a bunch of farmers here on a discussion group earlier this week, picking tea, actually, and giving me a really hard time about growing tea and all that kind of stuff. And I'd forgotten there were even elections, if I'm honest with you. And this came up as a discussion, and they actually came up with a different question. They said that they think that the Conservatives could gain seats because people don't like paying more tax locally. And they think that, and farmers are pretty astute, by the way. They love GBNews because they think that they're underrepresented as a bunch of people that feed the country. And they think that Boris has this amazing ability to, well, as the Lib Dem just said, he's unsinkable in that regard when it comes to elections. But most importantly, there is a war going on and he's seen to be on the winning side and people won't vote against that. So I think that was a summary of the great British farmer this week.
Well, I'm expecting you to have a cup of tea. That's it. I knew when the tea was coming. He always gets it in there. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Lovely to talk to you. There's Jonathan Tregotham Tea. He's there in Cornwall. Right. So today I'm asking whether you care about the council elections in May. Lots of you have been getting in touch, but joining me at the moment is Lembede Pick and also Albie Amankona. Yeah, you heard what Jonathan there said. He's still talking national and looking at the national picture, and they actually think that the Conservatives may gain seats.
Yes, the Conservatives may gain some seats, but as I said before, it really is about the councils and which councils are under control, which is the important figure that we should be thinking about. But again, my earlier point was that it's not going to be as bad a night for the Conservatives as many of us, even I was predicting. I was predicting that these local elections really would be disastrous for us, and I'm slightly relieved to see that that's not the case.
Well, we don't know that yet, Albie. What I would suspect is going to happen is we're mid-term, and that usually is bad for the government, whoever it is, Labour or Conservative, so you'd expect them to go down a bit anyway. I come back to the point I made before. I think the Lib Dems will gain because there'll be a bit of protest vote, and Lib Dems are pretty good at being local government folks, even if you don't vote for them for government, for national government, they do quite well locally. But here's the remarkable thing. Starmer has an open goal. And he's got this Partygate thing where even if it's technical in a sense and it's not that interesting to people, Starmer is unable to convert all of Boris's problems into anything positive.
I know, and that says a lot about him.
Yeah, and also now Boris has been able to do what Thatcher did, is look like a war leader to an extent.
But an 800-seat gain for Labour is a good outcome, and actually you could argue that that kind of gain maybe shows that Starmer is finally cutting through. That is an argument that some commentators are making.
But when you've got the first Prime Minister who's been found guilty of something that nobody else has been done.
And then you've got the Chancellor as well.
It's stunning.
He should be doing stunningly weak. He should be doing a lot better, but on the point you made that Starmer's not been able to make anything positive of his leadership, some might argue that an 800-seat gain...
Well, it'll be an achievement by default.
Well, let's see what you're thinking, because today I'm asking whether you care about the council elections in May. Lots of you who've been getting in touch. Dud says council elections in some areas are not widely publicised. Some council seats go uncontested year after year, giving opportunity for self-serving people to become long-term councillors who can push their own agenda. I can imagine you were one of those.
I was always fought a contested seat, and I had the biggest majority in my ward.
Yeah, and then what happened?
Actually.
No.
Actually. In Newcastle upon Tyne.
Well, yeah, that's where I'm from.
Bit.
Right, well, David says this: we need to get the Tories out of our council seat. So David is quite serious about that. He wants to get the council. But who's going to be in there instead, though? That's the thing. Are you getting someone better? Stuart says, I care about them all as a taxpayer. It's my money that they're spending. Well, you make a very good point there. But, you know, to me, council elections, I don't mean to be funny, but I don't know how much I care. I go in there and I'm actually quite loyal to my party that I vote for, and I just tick that one.
But ironically, actually, local authorities, in a way, make more difference than national politics. The guy called Tip O'Neill, he was an American politician, he said all politics is local. If you wreck your suspension in your car because of a pothole, that's because of the council. Social services, it's the council. To an extent, education is largely the council. So when I was a councillor, I actually probably enjoyed being a councillor more than being an MP, because you could actually make a real difference for a smaller number of people.
Well, you were a councillor for longer, weren't you?
No, actually. That really hurts. That really hurts.
Neil says this: a Tory defeat is on the cards, and Johnson will soon be looking at a removal company to move him out of number 10. Yeah, good point. But then, I mean, Neil, who do you want to move in? I'd like to hear that. William says, I reckon the Tories will clear up, and they really should. Boris is the only one who knows how to run this country properly, and it's the same for the Conservative councillors. Well, this to me is a little bit like, so in America you've got the Democrats and the Republicans, and all the democratically held seats and those states are usually the ones where there's all the problems, and the Republican ones are the ones that are better run. And that's how I see it in this country as well. We are similar for the Conservatives and Labour councils. I think that the Conservative councils are better run.
You know, I've had my run-ins with the Liberal Democrats. In fact, I used to share an office with Ed Davey, the leader now. I actually think the Lib Dems are at their best at local government level, but it's not really down to parties, it's down to individuals. It's something that Albie said before. If you've got a great local council, it doesn't really matter what the party is. They say, well, I'm going to be voting for Albie because he fixed my street, he got my mum the care that she needed. And that's the thing. The default position is if you don't know your council, then you vote according to your national party preferences.
And most people don't. And I think some of those councillors don't do a pretty bad job in that they don't make themselves visible. Well, let's see what Josephine says. Josephine, she says, I sincerely hope that the Lib Dems and Greens clear up because it takes being under their rule for a couple of years for the stay-at-home Tories to get down to vote. Yes, that's a good point. Good point, Josephine. I was wondering where you're going to go with that one, but you make a very, very good point. Right, let's see what's happening with the poll. That is up at the moment. It's on Twitter. It's on throughout the show, asking whether you care about the council elections in May. And currently, guess, 41% of you say yes, you do, and 59% say no. That's almost mirroring, actually, the percentage turnout. Interesting. Right. So, well, if you just tuned in, welcome on board. It's coming up to 49 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll discuss a huge breakthrough when it comes to spotting the early risks of ovarian cancer. Find out how a simple test could make a huge difference to thousands of women across the UK. First, let's get the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry for many with some sunshine, but cloudier in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Skies are likely to be cloudy across parts of Devon and Cornwall this afternoon, with some drizzle and sea fog in the west. Further east, it'll be brighter with some warm sunny spells. The brightness extends into southeast England, where there'll be plenty of sunny spells this afternoon, feeling warm in the sunshine with a high of 23 Celsius in London today. It's a cloudier picture for much of Wales, with some patchy drizzle over the hills. The sunshine could break through at times in the east, where it'll feel warm. After a bright start in northwest England, a little cloud will bubble up this afternoon, perhaps with 1 or 2 showers. However, most places should stay dry and warm. A bright and warm day in the northeast too, with some sunny spells. It could be cloudier at times along the coast of Northumberland. There'll be a touch of sunshine in eastern Scotland, where it'll feel pleasantly warm, but skies will be cloudier in the west. The cloud could bring a few spots of drizzle at times. Thicker cloud in Northern Ireland will bring some heavy showers this afternoon. The heavy downpours could bring hail and a few rumbles of thunder too. Showers will gradually ease this evening, leaving a dry end to the day for most and a mild evening too. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
We've got a big Saturday for you on GB News. From 6 a.m, it's breakfast with Stephen and Anne. At 10, join Esther and Philip for the Saturday selection. Alistair, Darren and Nana take you through the day. And don't miss Neil Oliver Live at 7 p.m. At
At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Saturday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board if you've just tuned in. Where have you been? It's coming up to 6 minutes to 5 o'clock. I'm just going to go. We were talking about whether you care about your local elections. I'm just going to quickly read one of these. Kate sent the message in saying, don't underestimate hundreds, if not thousands of women telling voters that Labour, Libs and Greens want to eliminate sex-based rights impacting schools, mixed-sex loos, etc. Yes, thank you for that, Kate. Keep those emails coming through on that subject, but there's been an extremely important breakthrough, and I really wanted to talk about this one because when it comes to the early signs of risks of ovarian cancer, now the discovery could pave the way for a new national screening programme, and researchers at the University of Oxford have found that women at risk of developing the deadly disease have high levels of a very specific protein in their bodies. It's called SOX2 and is produced in the fallopian tubes in high levels if a woman is in the early stages of ovarian cancer. And they're now developing a test that could be offered every 5 years to women over the age of 45. So I'm joined now by NHS doctor, Dr. Tolu Adepeju. Now, Tolu, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about this. So how promising is this specific breakthrough?
I mean, just from reading the article, it seems like they found the way to, detect, early stages of ovarian cancer, which is obviously very important because, as you can imagine, ovarian cancer kills quite a number of people every single year, especially in the UK. It seems like an important breakthrough, especially in ovarian cancer, and this is important to get the funding behind this, isn't it?
Yeah, well, obviously funding is always key for these things. So what is the current screening process then for ovarian cancer? Is it just a smear test? Is that what they do, and how can they tell?
So currently for ovarian cancer, there isn't like a set regime at the moment to test for it, because normally when we find people with ovarian cancer, it's normally at the late stages or at the point where it's spread, because the symptoms can be quite general, bloating, can be quite things that you wouldn't normally pick out as these are signs of ovarian cancer at the moment.
Yeah, because some of those, as you said, bloating is quite a generic sort of symptom, isn't it? Now, I think ovarian cancer ranks as the fifth most deadly cancer for women, which is great that we've got some sort of breakthrough. Now, this new screening process, do you think it's going to make a huge difference to women?
I think it'll make a big difference if you can find, and just not only with ovarian cancer, with any kind of cancer, if you can find a way to catch it at the early stages, it then obviously helps with outcomes down the line. Because ovarian cancer in itself, the outcomes aren't great, especially when you found it late. But whereas when you can find it early, then you can start treatment early and you have a much better chance of actually surviving it.
And in terms of the cancer itself, is it one that is commonplace to return? Because some cancers are less likely to return. And what is? You mentioned it's quite obviously all cancers are bad. Well, I've said it's the fifth most deadly cancer for women. But in your view, in terms of obviously the screening, what is the actual treatment for the disease itself? And is it one of those that recurs quite a lot?
So with ovarian cancer, there are various ways to treat it. Obviously, you can go down the chemo route, you can go down the radiotherapy route. Just depends on when we catch it, what age we caught it at, what stage the cancer itself is at. It just completely varies. So there is no one way to treat it. And of course, like you said, all cancers are deadly. But as you yourself reiterated, it is the fifth most deadly cancer for women, which is obviously quite high on the list. So any way we can catch it early and start treatment early would give us a better chance of actually surviving this kind of cancer.
Because these sort of cancers are not great. So for women to find out more about this, and is there a plan as to when this particular screening might be coming into play, when women can actually access this?
So from the article I read, it said essentially it needs quite a lot of funding, and they're thinking maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, which is obviously quite a long time when you think about when we know about a way to find ovarian cancers early. It's quite a long time for that to then come into play. But you need the scientific proof behind it. You need to make sure that you can actually find these cancers early and not force results or things like that, which does take time, unfortunately.
Annoying. I mean, like when they wanted to find a COVID vaccine, they could chuck money at it, but when it comes to a cancer, which could in the long run save money because you won't be treating so many people who are ill, they're struggling to find funds. Listen, Dr. Tula Ajapedis, thank you very much for joining me. He's an NHS doctor. Right, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. So potentially something that could help detect ovarian cancer earlier, but it could be years before we even get into that.
I think the last point you made about billions of pounds, dollars being chucked at the COVID vaccine and that being developed within a year, and this potential screening process for ovarian cancer might not come into play for 5 to 10 years is disappointing. I think it is very exciting that there is a potentially life-changing ovarian cancer screening process going to come in 10 years' time, or has been found. But I think we really need to use that COVID spirit of things to really hurry these processes along to save lives and make the lives of women easier in Britain.
Yeah, I wish we would. I wish we would get on with this. Well, listen, if you just joined us, welcome on board. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. There's loads more to come in the next hour. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Ukraine says 7 people have been killed in shelling in Kharkiv as several powerful explosions hit the capital Kiev and surrounding areas. Russia says it's increasing its missile strikes after the sinking of one of its warships in the Black Sea. Ukrainian forces claim the Moskva sank after they hit it with missiles on Wednesday, but the Kremlin insists it went down after an explosion on board. Former British Army officer Stuart Crawford told GB News the loss of the vessel is significant.
But however it happened, it is a major blow for prestige, and these things resonate through population. It will be a morale boost for Ukraine. I think we in the West have just got to keep pressing to deliver the sort of weapons that they need to defend their territory and also eventually to take back territory which has been lost.
The UN's Refugee Agency says UK proposals to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing are illegal. Downing Street says migrants who arrive in the UK illegally could be sent to the East African country within 6 weeks. The Prime Minister hopes their £120 million deal will serve as a considerable deterrent to migrants attempting to cross the Channel. But immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal says the scheme is expensive and unworkable.
Last year, Australia processed 249 people offshore. It cost them £461 million, so UK pounds. If we're thinking, and the expectations are now, in the eyes of the British public, oh, this is great, there's going to be 20,000 people sent to Rwanda, their figures just don't make sense at all. £120 million isn't going to cut it.
Hundreds of Palestinians have been detained after clashes with Israeli police at one of Jerusalem's holiest sites. Officers tried to disperse a large crowd of people at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, also known as Temple Mount. Israeli authorities say groups were throwing rocks at the compound after morning prayer. At least 150 people have been injured. The clashes come as Christians, Jews and Muslims prepare to celebrate Easter, Passover and Ramadan. Residents in Shanghai have clashed with police over new coronavirus policies. It's being reported residents have protested after being told to immediately leave their apartment building so the government can use it as a COVID isolation facility. Footage shows people kneeling and even lying down in front of police wearing hazmat suits, with some being dragged away. Latest figures show there are 23,000 infections in Shanghai. Several oil firms have secured court injunctions to try to stop protesters blockading fuel processing sites in the UK. It's as dozens of Just Stop Oil protesters were charged after 3 oil terminals were blocked today. The government says it's pleased to see oil companies taking action to secure the normal delivery of fuel. But Paul Sheekey from Just Stop Oil says they have no choice but to continue demonstrating.
And obviously we don't do this lightly. We've tried everything else. We've literally done everything we possibly could to get this message across. And it's not a message, it's a cry for help. It's an emergency, and we need to be acting like it's an emergency. The UN says it's a code red for humanity, and the government are just failing.
A man has been charged after the bodies of 2 people were found at separate addresses in Scotland. The body of 51-year-old Paul Duffy was discovered on Sunday in Coatbridge, North Lanarkshire. Officers also found the body of 26-year-old Emma Bailey in a nearby property 2 days later. A 46-year-old man will appear in connection with the deaths at Airdrie Sheriff Court tomorrow. And England's Test cricket captain Joe Root says stepping down from the role is the most challenging decision of his career. Root holds the record for the highest number of Test match wins as captain since he took on the role in 2017. But he's chosen to leave after 2 series defeats against the West Indies last month and Australia in the winter. Vice-captain Ben Stokes has paid tribute, though, saying Root has been a privilege to play with. Well, this is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
Well, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. Mine, theirs, and of course yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik, and also co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Still to come, every Friday I put the focus on a particular guest or a subject matter, and in a few moments We'll be discussing the government's controversial plans to send some migrants who crossed the channel to Rwanda to be processed. The first asylum seekers could be flown there from the UK within weeks. But refugee organisations have criticised the plan as cruel. So in the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is the Rwanda migrant deal a good or bad idea? I'll speak to an expert in Rwandan history and culture to find out more about the country and ask whether it's the right place to send UK asylum seekers. And there's been gridlock across many of Britain's roads and motorways, with some queues around about 30 miles long as bank holiday weekend kicks off. Now, the RAC, there's always a caravan. The RAC is predicting a record 21.5 million car journeys across this weekend, and the outlook isn't much better at UK airports. We'll get the latest and ask, is the UK travel system broken? Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. So we start the hour with Friday Focus, and this week the Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants the first migrant flights to Rwanda to start within weeks. Despite criticism that the plans are cruel, the trial will involve mostly single men arriving on boats or lorries. And in a speech yesterday, Boris Johnson said that £120 million schemes could save countless lives from human trafficking. And he sounded pretty determined to make his plan stick.
Economic migrants taking advantage of the asylum system will not get to stay in the UK, while those in genuine need will be properly protected, including with access to legal services on arrival in Rwanda, and given the opportunity to build a new life in that dynamic country, supported by the funding we are providing.
So, refugee organisations have raised concerns about Rwanda's human rights record and the legality of the plans. The Rwanda scheme is part of a broader strategy that's aimed to reduce the number of people entering the UK via the channel crossings in small boats. Last year, the figure reached 28,526, up from 8,404 in 2020. And of course, that 28,000 is only the ones that we know about. Right, so I'm joined now by Claire Pearsall. She's the former Special Advisor to the Immigration Minister. Claire, thank you very much for joining me. Right, so I'm going to ask you about this plan. In your view, is it a reasonable plan?
Well, it will not surprise you. I don't think it is a reasonable plan. It's been ill thought through. It's going to be very, very expensive. You're looking at £120 million over 5 years, which is purely for development costs. That is not ongoing costs of processing. So the Rwandan government at the moment can only take roughly and accommodate 100 people. So that doesn't really make a dent in the sort of over 28,000 that arrived in the past 12 months. So they will come to us for more money. How much money, we don't know. And it's got to stop somewhere. So until this is all worked out, I don't think this should have been launched.
Yeah, but do you not think that might send a message to people that if you do come here, you are at risk, even if you are only one of 100 people or whatever, you are at risk of going to Rwanda, and that may help to stop the model that the traffickers are using to perpetuate this cycle?
No, I don't. I think if people are desperate, they will try to come to the United Kingdom. The traffickers won't care either way. They will take their money. They don't care what happens to the person once they have left their shores in France, for example. So it's not going to stop that. People want to come here. Quite a lot of people will have family here. They want to come and join them. It isn't going to put them off. They want to come somewhere safe. So I think that we needed to have looked at the asylum system a lot more cleverer than we've done, rather than just make this someone else's problem.
Risk of you being the one that ends up in Rwanda, having come from Rwanda, isn't really, I mean, do you not think that there's some level of deterrent? Because after all, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to deter people from taking the crossing.
And I agree with that. We do need to deter people from making that crossing. It is incredibly dangerous, and we don't want to see any more lives being lost. But I think that, just the thought of perhaps ending up on a plane, there's no definite meaning that they will end up on a plane. So it's not really a deterrent at all. We don't know when it's going to start. The Prime Minister said hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Well, how long is that really? And is this going to be up and running? So I don't think it's going to deter those people. But what about the people already stuck in the asylum system going nowhere? We have to sort this out as a round and not just look at dumping the problem elsewhere.
What are the other options then for people? If you can't come via the dinghy, obviously that's not a good idea, or the lorries as they've been doing, what are the other real legitimate options that you can use to come here?
Well, I think this is also half the problem because there are no safe and legal routes set up for those wishing to claim asylum. There are schemes for those who are refugees and have that status, and there are schemes for refugee families, which are very, very different. But if you want to claim asylum, there is nothing set up. Now, the United Kingdom has been great at setting up bespoke schemes like the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme and Ukrainian scheme that we've just seen recently, and also for Afghanistan. But other than that, there is nothing. We need to be able to look a bit further afield now and change the way we ask for people to apply for asylum and perhaps have that from outside the United Kingdom, which we don't normally do.
What's the difference then? So seeking asylum, why is it different from being a refugee? What is the difference between someone seeking asylum and someone who's a refugee?
Well, you can be seeking asylum for varying different reasons. These could be political prisoners, these could be LGBT people who are in threat of their own lives. So there are many other reasons. A refugee normally is from a war-torn country where they are literally bombed out of their own country. So they're very, very different things, and the classification is quite a legal matter. Most refugees will end up in camps set across the world, which they are processed there. So why can't we have a look perhaps at putting these sort of asylum reception centres in other parts of the countries, across Europe, for example? So not necessarily wanting to come to the UK. You might find that people wish to then go to France, to Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, you name it. There could be other countries open to them that they haven't perhaps realised.
But isn't that called an embassy? I mean, you'd think that there's embassies all over the world. Why can't people, if they want to seek asylum, go to an embassy and then apply there? I mean, that seems pretty basic. We've already got the infrastructure. I'm wondering why nobody seems to have come up with that. It seems pretty obvious. Does that
well, it does, and it would be a very, very good use of them. I just wonder perhaps if there is the will from someone like the Foreign Office to have that. It would make perfect sense. You would have everything in one place. So I suspect that it wouldn't be popular for many reasons, but I actually think that's a very good idea. And perhaps you should put that forward to the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary.
Might have a chat with Richard Harrington, although he doesn't appear to know what the left is doing, because the right and the left, because apparently they're down the hallway and he didn't seem to think that it was happening. Well, listen, thank you so much, Claire. It's really good to talk to you. I might just put it to them. That's Claire Pearsall. She's the Conservative councillor and former special advisor. Right, let's go on to David Goodhart, the head of Policy Exchange, Demography, I can't even say that now, Demography, Immigration and Integration Unit. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? I mean, you know. Right, so David, really pleased that you...
Demography unit is fine.
Thank you very much. Even that I was struggling with. David, well, listen, were you pleased then when you heard that the Prime Minister has got this new plan?
No, I wasn't pleased exactly. It is obviously rather a bizarre option in some ways. You know, Rwanda is a country that had the most violent civil war less than 30 years ago. There are doubts about its civil rights record now, its human rights record now. It's a long way away. It's in the middle of Africa. On the other hand, no democratic government can allow such a visible dismissal of its borders, of its immigration rules. 50 or 60,000 people are going to come across the channel this year unless we do something about it. It's an incredibly vivid image that'll be on our TV screens, most evenings, and it undermines faith in the immigration system. It undermines faith in democracy. I mean, it's a great driver of populist party support. Seeing people coming in and just flouting the rules. So a democratic government has to do something about it. It needs some kind of game changer. We've been talking about offshore processing. Offshore processing is now pretty well established. that it happened in Australia. There was pushback against the boats in Australia, and the boats stopped coming. The EU-Turkey deal was also essentially pushing back against the boats and allowing for some offshore processing. So it's not a completely new innovation. So we've got to do something. I mean, whether Rwanda is the right place is a big question, but I think, the government was in a position of having to take some kind of action.
But do you not think it will act as some sort of deterrent? As you said, in Australia, they had something similar where they'd process some people in other places, and then they turned back the boats as well, which then literally stopped this sort of migration in a heartbeat. So to me, listening to it, I think it's a great idea. Or obviously it's going to be expensive, but the deal is that in the long run, it'll be cheaper than having, and also safer for people because they'll stop coming via the channel. Do you not think that that's...
Well, I agree. I mean, that's why I'm sort of, giving some sort of qualified support to it as well. It is just, I wonder if there is a better place to do it that is outside the legal boundaries of the UK. Rwanda does seem a kind of a big step. But I mean, the real problem here, which I think, a lot of I have a lot of respect for all the refugee NGOs. They do a lot of great work, but I think they fail to recognise the kind of contradiction at the heart of the asylum system now, which is that we offer this kind of unconditional right.
We're losing you.
Right.
We're losing you, David, unfortunately, but it's really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for offering that side of the argument. That's David Goodhart. He's the head of Policy Exchange, Demography, Immigration and Integration Unit. Yeah, got it. Right, let's see what my panel make of that. I have a chat with former Liberal Democrat MP Lemido Pick and also Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amonkona. Let's go to you, Albi, first on this one. What do you think?
I think it is a really tricky situation that we have with the Channel migrant crossings. I think, as David was saying, the predictions for this year are that 60,000 could make that really dangerous journey across the Channel, and the government has to do something to try and stem that. Now, whether this is the right thing, I think, is up for debate. As Claire said, I mean, if what she says is right, that Rwanda can only accommodate 100 people, then that's clearly quite a big problem. But she was also absolutely right to say that if there's going to be a deterrent, there also need to be safe and legal routes as well, because we're only really solving half of the problem. I've always advocated for a firm and fair approach. I think we need a deterrent, whether or not that's sending people to Rwanda does seem quite extreme. Sending them back to France, we need more European cooperation for that. We need a firm but fair approach, but it means that we need to have a deterrent and safe and legal routes. Now, at the moment, we've only got one of them.
It's clearly designed to be a deterrent. And you even heard that in the government statement. Well, maybe you can have a happy life in Rwanda. In other words, don't come back here again. So they're hoping that it's so far from Rwanda back to Calais that they'll start a new life there. There's something quite colonialist about it, in my opinion. £1.2 million per person, if what Claire said, and Claire's very authoritative on this subject, Claire Purcell. If she's right, that's £120 million to process 100 people. Really? Is that really going to be value for money for us? Why don't we do more or less what you suggested there, Albi, or what you inferred? Let's talk to our neighbours, the French, and say, let's just have a grown-up attitude about this.
Well, have a look at it, right? If it was 8,000 2 years ago, or whatever it is, and now it's 28,000, if you do the multiples, so if every few years it multiplies itself by 3 or even 4, then at 28,000 we're coming to 100,000. So if you start to do the maths and work out how much it's going to cost, currently it costs us 4 million a day with the current number of refugees that we're processing, then I actually think that Rwanda might end up being a cheaper option, especially if it stops people from coming over. But I'd love to hear what people have to say, because coming up we'll be having the full-on Great British debate on this. I'm asking, is the Rwanda migrant deal a good or bad idea? I'll find out more about the country from an expert in Rwandan history and culture, and find out if it is actually the right place to send people. Right, first let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry for many with some sunshine, but cloudier in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Skies are likely to be cloudy across parts of Devon and Cornwall this afternoon, with some drizzle and sea fog in the west. Further east, it'll be brighter with some warm sunny spells. The brightness extends into southeast England, where there'll be plenty of sunny spells this afternoon, feeling warm in the sunshine with a high of 23 Celsius in London today. It's a cloudier picture for much of Wales, with some patchy drizzle over the hills. The sunshine could break through at times in the east, where it'll feel warm. After a bright start in northwest England, a little cloud will bubble up this afternoon, perhaps with 1 or 2 showers. However, most places should stay dry and warm. A bright and warm day in the northeast too, with some sunny spells. It could be cloudier at times along the coast of Northumberland. There'll be a touch of sunshine in eastern Scotland, where it'll feel pleasantly warm, but skies will be cloudier in the west. The cloud could bring a few spots of drizzle at times. Thicker cloud in Northern Ireland will bring some heavy showers this afternoon. The heavy downpours could bring hail and a few rumbles of thunder too. Showers will gradually ease this evening, leaving a dry end to the day for most and a mild evening too. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. Coming up to 25 minutes after 5 o'clock, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And of course, I'm still with my panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik, and also co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. So in a moment, we're going to continue to discuss the deal to send migrants entering the UK to Rwanda for processing. We were discussing the idea before the break, but let's have a look at what you've already been saying. Teresa says, I think it's perfectly all right to send illegal immigrants to Rwanda, as long as they're made aware of this policy before they cross the English Channel. Then it's their choice. If they don't want to go to Rwanda, then don't come across the Channel. See, I think that's pretty straightforward. Bill says the policy is rubbish. The Prime Minister is worried May elections, he's vote catching. You think, well, what's he supposed to do? He's the Prime Minister. We asked them to sort out immigration. Let's see. Linda says, I constantly hear that immigrants are fleeing persecution from war-torn countries. If this was true, it would be women and children. Loads of single men come over. Send them to Rwanda. Keep your thoughts coming. It's great, isn't it? Keep them coming at GB News. But right now, of course, let's do the Great British Debate this hour. And we continue the Rwanda conversation. I'm asking, is the Rwanda migrant deal a good or bad deal? So what do you think? Boris Johnson wants the first asylum seekers to be flown there from the UK within weeks. The Prime Minister said that yesterday that the plans to send migrants to Rwanda would give them the opportunity to build a new life in the country, which he described as dynamic. But the move has been described as absolutely chilling and cruel and nasty by charities and politicians, although I wonder if any of them have actually been to Rwanda. I wonder if that is the case. So I'm asking, is this deal a good or bad idea? So let's find out what Rwanda is actually like and get some more history and culture about the nation and whether it is actually a good place to house refugees. Let's speak to Dr. Gerard Prunier, who's the author of the Rwanda Crisis. Dr. Gerard, thank you for joining me. Right now, so first of all, then, so Gerard, why do you think that Boris Johnson has chosen Rwanda as the place?
Hello.
Hello.
Why did we? Yes. Well, I can't see anything on the screen.
Don't worry. As long as you can hear me, you can hear me, can't you?
Yes.
And we can see you as well, so it's all good. If you're watching on TV, you'll be able to see. Otherwise, we can listen to you on the radio. So, Gerard, then, do you think? Tell us a little bit about Rwanda. What kind of a country is it?
Well, the problem is the European and white guilt about Rwanda. Because when there was a genocide in Rwanda, in spite of the fact that there were UN troops on the ground, we did not lift a finger, and we let 800,000 people be killed. So why do you choose Rwanda, which has got nothing to do with its refugee crisis? It is just a kind of convenient, dumping ground, that's all. And why such a place? Because we are feeling terribly ashamed of our behavior during the Rwanda genocide. And so Mr. Kagame, who is a dictator, is okay with us because he's the dictator that we did not prevent, we did not put into power or prevent to getting into power, but that we neglected while everybody was getting killed. So, of course, he can now present himself as being some kind of a remedy. He's a traveling salesman for a solution that benefits only British or other Europeans.
So, you see, people are saying that it's cruel to send people to Rwanda, and they're talking as though Rwanda is some sort of archaic, rough country. But the pictures that, if you were watching on TV, you would have seen were of Rwanda, and anyone can check us out on the GB News app to find out more. But it seems like a very nice, quite well-to-do place. What is Rwanda? Does it have a very bad human rights record? Is it terrible? What's your experience of it?
But, the human rights record doesn't have anything to do with refugees. The human rights record of Rwanda is extremely poor, and it's concerning their own population. Now the refugees are going to be sitting in some kind of camps of one kind or another. It's nothing cruel to send them there. It's just cruel to send them, if they come all the way, for example, from Afghanistan into Rwanda, about which it's like the other side of the moon, as far as they are concerned. And it's not because Rwanda is a terrible place. It's not a terrible place. It has a terrible human rights record, but it concerns only its own population, and it will in no case concern the refugees.
And do you think that the people of Rwanda, if they get wind of this, how do you think they'll feel about the policy, or won't they really care?
They couldn't care less about it, because they have had such a terrible, situation since 1990, over the last 30 years, that frankly they care about themselves. And about these refugees, they could as well be Martians as far as they are concerned.
And do you think that because the idea is that they'll go there and then there'll be refugees to build their lives there, do you think that the economy in Rwanda is strong enough to offer people being sent their jobs?
No, obviously not. I mean, the problem is jobs for the Rwandese themselves. And this is not an economy where you can integrate culturally alien people just at like this with the switch of a light switch. It's simply impossible. I mean, this is not Singapore or some kind of a growing economy. Yes, it is growing in its own style. That is growing coffee and potatoes and maize. The refugees are not exactly looking for that kind of an economy.
So would you say then, in short, that this is a good or a bad idea to send people, the refugees or asylum seekers even, to Rwanda?
It's a terrible idea. And it is not because of the Rwandese. They're not going to do anything to harm the refugees, but they will look at them as something that is fallen from outer space on their ground because their president, authoritarian president, has decided this was a way of making money for the Rwandese budget, period.
Dr. Gerard Brunier, thank you very much for talking to us. He's the author of The Rwanda Crisis. And after speaking to him, I actually want to read the book. I'm asking you now, is the Rwanda migrant deal a good or bad idea? Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Robert says, this has only been done to prop up Boris by increasing his popularity near to an election. In reality, we won't be sending any migrants to Rwanda. Do you really think that our judges would allow that? Yeah, you know what, there's a whole legal system to stop that from happening, although I think the Nationality and Borders Bill might change that. Marilyn says it's the best solution so far. We can't keep taking people in. Stuart says it's a brilliant idea. No more need to be said. Yeah, do you know, I quite like the idea. I can't help myself. I mean, keep your thoughts coming. I love to hear your thoughts, but you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue our Great British debate, and I'm asking, is the Rwanda migrant deal a good or bad idea? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, co-founder for Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lemido Pick. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you. It's 5:32. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. Ukraine says street battles are ongoing in Mariupol. 7 people have been killed in Kharkiv. Shelling and several powerful explosions have hit the capital, Kiev, and surrounding areas. Russia says it's increasing its missile strikes after the sinking of one of its warships in the Black Sea. Ukrainian forces claim the Moskva sank after they hit it with missiles on Wednesday, but the Kremlin insists it went down after an explosion on board. The UN's Refugee Agency says UK proposals to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing are illegal under international law. It's as Downing Street says migrants who arrive in the UK unlawfully could be sent to the East African country within 6 weeks. The Prime Minister hopes the £120 million deal will serve as a considerable deterrent to migrants attempting to cross the Channel. More than 150 people have been injured in clashes inside Jerusalem's most holy site. Israel says it's arrested hundreds of Palestinians after rocks and fireworks were thrown at police at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, also known as Temple Mount. Security forces are on high alert after a series of deadly Arab street attacks in the last fortnight. Several oil firms have secured court injunctions to try to stop protesters blockading fuel processing sites in the UK. It's as dozens of Just Stop Oil protesters were charged after 3 oil terminals were blocked today. The government says it's pleased to see oil companies taking action to secure the normal delivery of fuel. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. We'll be back to Nana Akua after the break.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, in a few moments' time, I'll ask, is the UK travel system broken? Midday has seen more travel chaos across many of Britain's roads and motorways, with some of the queues around about 30 miles long as the bank holiday weekend gets underway. So, what do you think? Is it broken? But first, back to the great British debate this hour. Is the Rwanda migrant deal a good or bad idea? The government's faced criticism for its new plans to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda for their applications to be processed. And there's been questions over the costs and the impact that it will have, as well as Rwanda's human rights record. But the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, said that the scheme will save countless lives, as it'll deter people from attempting to make dangerous channel crossings on dinghies. So the question is the policy a good or bad idea? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by the co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Aman-Kona, and also former... Where are you looking, Albie? Also former Liberal Democrat MP, Lembit Opik. Well, I keep seeing him on this thing and I'm thinking, what's he looking at?
Looking at you. We're looking at you.
And Lembit Opik. Right, yes. Lembit, what do you... I'm sorry, it's just a moment.
Looking at me? You're looking at me?
What's he looking at?
You're looking at me?
Right, so... Lembit, to you first then. Good or bad idea?
It's a ridiculous idea.
What is your...
This is a ridiculous idea. Let's get the figures in perspective here, Nana. £120 million was an upfront payment. That's what we're paying now. Maybe
we did that to the French. We gave them 54 or whatever.
OK, but the difference is that £120 million when it comes to Rwanda is roughly 1.5% of their entire GDP. Of course they're going to agree with this. It'd be like somebody giving us £30 billion to deal with their immigration problem. Secondly, let's not pretend that this is because they think, that the government thinks that Rwanda sounds a bit like California or something. We're sending them to a place which isn't meant to sound very attractive.
It's a deterrent. They haven't denied that at all.
OK, but then who's going to be responsible for the human rights of the people we send over? We'll say, well, take your chances when we get to Rwanda. Your expert was talking about genocide. Now, that's not happening now, but there's been a really bad record there, and it's all meant to put people off. I actually think this is ridiculous. It's like saying to somebody, if you misbehave, we're going to make your life hell, so everybody else can see you as an example.
Well, my parents threatened that if I misbehaved, they'd send me to the convent boarding school run by nuns. I thought they were joking. I ended up right there. I actually had quite a good time, to be honest with you. But look, this is the thing, isn't it? Look, we are doing something to deter people. We're not going to say, oh, it's going to be all roses and this and that. We're saying that if you come here, we'll take you to a processing centre where we'll process your application, and if it's legitimate, then you can come and stay in the UK. Isn't that what we're saying? We're not saying we're just going to leave you in Rwanda, but if you're not meant to be in this country and I think it's 40% of those who come via the channel aren't necessarily meant to be here or aren't legitimate, then what's the problem?
I think on balance, Nana, I think it would have been a better idea, actually, to really pump up negotiations with the French after the French election. I think one of the big blocks in that whole process of negotiation with the French was that there was a French election going on, and it always polls quite well for French presidents to bash the British.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. Now, that election's going to be happening in a couple of weeks' time. And I think the better idea would have been to really focus on those negotiations, to sort out a European solution to what is a European problem, and come to some kind of agreement with the French on channel
We've
crossing.
been talking about this for ages. Nothing's happening. The numbers have gone up from about 8,000 a couple of years ago to 28,000. And if we continue to replicate that multiple, it'll be hundreds of thousands of people coming here. And if the other day's anything to go by, what was it, 600 people coming across, then we can't sustain that. So it's all very well, all these wonderful, well-meaning, left-leaning individuals who are talking about, oh, it's terrible and this and that, but they've not come up with any solutions. I think mine's the best one, saying that you should use the embassies. But use the embassies if you're worried about that. But I still agree with the fact that you could have a processing centre in Rwanda. I don't see an issue with that.
Let's say you have 10 drones. I'm not trying to be a namby-pamby liberal. I'm trying to be pragmatic about this. First of all, my parents, I have to declare an interest. My parents were allowed in here with their parents after World War II, and I would have been never born if they'd been sent back to the Soviet Union, because they'd have been exterminated, probably. So I'm really grateful for the fact that around 1940, 1945, Britain let people like my parents and grandparents in. But the issue here is...
But they came legitimately, right? They didn't get on a dinghy and cross the channel.
Well, yeah, but it was a very chaotic time.
But they came legitimately, right?
They did, but I wouldn't say that they had the same level of scrutiny as we have now.
Well, you know, but they still came legitimately. And actually, I think they had more scrutiny, because my parents had, when they came here, they had to literally jump through hoops. You had to have a certain amount of money. They checked your background and this and that. There was a proper process by which that they were checked.
Let me put it this way then. OK, if my parents and grandparents had been sent to Rwanda, it just doesn't feel right to me. Let's look at an alternative. What else could we do? Because rather than just moaning about what they're proposing, here's an alternative.
Don't try and steal my idea about the embassies.
I've got an even better one.
Let's see. Yeah.
Well, you judge. You be the judge.
We'll both be the judge. And you at home, you'll be the judge as well.
I'm going to lose 2-1 then, aren't I? But still, I would say, let's say you had 10 drones on 24-hour surveillance. Let's say that costs, making this figure up, £10,000 a day. That'll be about 4 million a year. Now, you could actually patrol the channel pretty effectively with on-station drones, and then apprehend these boats, and then have a proper holding facility. If you can't get the French to agree, even after the election, Albie, then you have a proper holding facility on the shores of Britain. And then what you do is you send them back to where they started if they were not legitimate.
Yes, but
rocket science.
Yeah, but it's not working. This whole thing about sending people back from the place that they come, it's just not working. We can't even send them back to France.
So we send them to Rwanda
And listen,
instead.
the majority of people who come here end up staying here. So it means that the majority of those who come that way are legitimate, supposedly. So fair enough. But I'm saying that, well, why? I haven't got an issue with people being processed elsewhere. And I think that it'll be a deterrent for people, because remember, what we are deterring people from doing is taking a dangerous crossing. No, we're trying to break a model. Let's not forget what we're trying to do. You're trying to break the people smuggling model. You're trying to deter people from crossing and taking a dangerous journey. So you need to offer a suitable alternative, so as I said, at embassies. And if they do come here via that route, then they're almost a deterrent, which they wouldn't want to do.
To which I would simply say, then why? Sorry.
Look, I think if we are going to have a deterrent, I think this deterrent is very extreme. If we are going to have a deterrent, there have to be safe and legal routes, which is essentially what your embassy idea is about. And what we need to hear from the government are, when are these safe and legal routes going to open? We've managed to open a safe and legal route for the Ukrainian refugees. It's not been going very well. I hope it will get better. But we need to be talking about these safe and legal routes for refugees if we're going to be implementing a really extreme deterrent.
Well, I was going to say deterrents are meant to be extreme. Nuclear weapons are extreme deterrents. You're not meant to be using the deterrent. That's the idea of it.
But we are using this one, aren't we?
No, but we're trying. Well. But that's why it's a minimal. The numbers are minimal, and that's why we don't really want people to take the crossing in the first place. That is the bottom line. We want to break the traffickers' model, and this is one of the ways of doing it. However, I think we do need some safe and legal routes for people to come, and I would say I would use those embassies, which are already there. And Boris, you can do it in a couple of weeks, seeing as you can do this whole thing to Rwanda in a couple of weeks. Right. But today I'm asking, is the Rwandan migrant deal a good or bad idea? And lots of you have been sending in your thoughts. Sean says it's an amazing idea. We need more deportations. Meg says something needed to be done. Deterrent is the key message. Absolutely. Absolutely, that's the point. We don't really want to send anybody anywhere. We don't want them to cross via the channel. Aisha says it's a good idea, but let's be honest, it'll be mucked up and we'll soon hear stories of horrific abuse and conditions. Yeah, but we hear those stories all the time, in any case, everywhere. We just want to make sure that people stop taking the crossings. I can't imagine that the smugglers are giving people good conditions. It's a dangerous crossing in horrendous conditions. Graham says, if no one is coming across the channel in 6 months' time, then great. If it hasn't, then it needs to stop and a different solution chosen. Hanok says, it's cruel and inhuman. Why? Do you think it's cruel and inhuman, Lambert? Do you think it's cruel and inhuman?
Not necessarily.
What's wrong with Rwanda? It's not that.
The issue here is, and the reason I find that point very interesting, is we actually have then got a responsibility for human rights in Rwanda. How do we police that? How do we stop ourselves ending up in a human rights court? Because whether you like it or not, those people who are taken to Rwanda end up having a bad life.
No, but you heard what Gerald said. He said that it wasn't really a big deal for those who are going there. Sean says it's an amazing idea. We need more deportations to keep illegal immigrants out. So that's his thoughts. Keep your thoughts coming as well. Right, we move on because, of course, it is the Easter bank holiday. And as ever, as expected, there's been disruption across many of Britain's motorways and UK airports as the Easter bank holiday kicks off. Large numbers of Brits are set to take to the roads, and the RAC is predicting a record 21.5 million number of car journeys across the weekend. Airports are also urging passengers to arrive early for flights with delays of 90 minutes or more getting through security. And it's bad on trains too, with engineering work cancelling journeys across the weekend. They always do that, don't they? When everyone's going to go, then they decide, let's do some engineering works. So what can we do to make Britain's transport networks better? Well, that's one, isn't it? Not engineering works on bank holidays. I'm joined now by Lisa Francesca Nand, a travel journalist and host of the Big Travel Podcast. Lisa, thank you for joining me. You look like you're somewhere like an airport. Where are you? Are you at some nice airport somewhere?
Yeah, Nana, I have to say it's hideous here. I'm on the beach in Malaga. I had to get here a few days ago, and I actually came on the Eurostar because I went to Paris first. And I've never seen queues like it. I had to wait an hour and 15 minutes before I got into the Eurostar. So I was just really thankful that I heeded my own advice and actually left a lot of extra time to get there.
Well, I'm one of those people that gives out a lot of advice and never actually listens to it myself. but back in the UK, of course, the RAC are predicting there's going to be a record number of motorists on roads and things like that on the weekend. Why do you think there's so many of us wanting to drive to go somewhere?
I think it's a couple of things. I think there's a massive pent-up demand for travel. We've all had a difficult couple of years. I mean, travel abroad this time last year was illegal. We couldn't go anywhere, so people have got used to going places in the UK. Although one of the things that really frustrates me, and you touched on it a little bit there, is the train system. You know, we want to get people out their cars, don't we? We talk about the environment, about that sort of thing. We want to get people out their cars, but the trains are really expensive and they're doing engineering work at the time when we all want to go on holiday. So people naturally take to their cars, and I think that's very, very frustrating. But the RAC are saying there's more car journeys than ever this bank holiday weekend.
People do you think people have been put off a bit from going internationally, and there's just a lot more journeys, people are staying more at home now?
I think there's an appetite for travel wherever you look. You know, people have had a difficult couple of years. There's absolutely no shame in wanting a holiday. But then also consumer confidence has been knocked by, you know, difficulties with the government restrictions, which was now ended. But now we're talking about the airline difficulties. We've had COVID staff issues. So, yeah, people have got used to holidaying at home and also thinking, well, actually, the trains and the planes are in a bit of a mess. I'll try and avoid them. And then when you think about it, we've actually got the issues with the ferries as well. So if you look at it, you could think that we're actually stuck in the UK. And I say we, you know, talking about me here in Malaga. But you know, things are moving. And the way I look at it, Nana, is that if you look at this time last year, it was illegal to travel out the country, and you have to put a positive spin on it. OK, there might be delays and cancellations, but the majority, and delays in traffic as well, and problems on the trains, but the majority of us can go away and can travel if we want to. So my advice is leave extra time and try and put a positive spin on it and be actually, we can go somewhere, which is a good thing.
She says from Malaga. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. That's Lisa Francesca Nan. She's a travel journalist and host of the Big Travel Podcast. So there you have it. Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and also Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Travel, you didn't go anywhere, you didn't want to?
I travel a lot on business, and technically you could do it during the lockdown, but I remember on one occasion I was on the flight and there were 17 people on the entire aircraft. So I think that, as T just said, there's been pent-up stress here. What's interesting about it, though, is this staycation idea. I think a lot of people are still, I don't know this, but I feel that a lot of people are staying in the UK just because they don't quite know what the rules are now.
I don't want to go abroad. What about you, Albi?
I think I liked the positive spin she put on it at the end. It was illegal for most people to travel last year. Now we can all go away. That is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the problems when it comes to airports is actually about staff sickness levels, and that causes a lot of problems with anything happening pretty much, whether it's security, whether it's refuelling, whether it's passport control. We've also seen Border Force agents actually sent down to the Channel to deal with the migrant crisis, so linking it back to the earlier story. So that's another factor in it. And then train engineering works. You think that now people don't really commute into work on Mondays and Fridays. Why can't they do engineering works on Mondays and Fridays instead of at holidays when people all want to get away?
It's a very good question. I don't know why nobody seems to want to answer that one. I don't know why they do it. Why do they do it? Is it a joke? I think it's a joke. It's just a joke, is it, to make it miserable for us. Right, well, let's do some quick fires because it is, of course, time for our quick fire debates, the part of the show where we discuss some of the day's other headlines. So joining me today, if you've just joined us, is Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and also former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Right, so let's have a look at our first story. Now, this one is about my favourite mode of transport. I'm joking. Electric cars. Mercedes have managed to run a battery-powered car for 1,000 kilometres, I don't know what that is in miles, on a single charge. I think it's about 600 miles.
620.
It cost the equivalent of £14 in petrol and travelled from Germany to France. So does that show that electric cars are becoming more practical? What do you think, Lembit?
No.
I knew you'd say that.
We just talked about 21.5 million cars on the roads in tailbacks. What happens when it gets hot? You've got your aircon on and the battery goes flat.
Exactly.
Come on. Now, this is maybe progress, but nothing substantial has happened in terms of battery technology for like 40 years. I would like to believe it's true. I'm not going to go through my normal...
No, I love it. All the facials.
There is no climate emergency. Okay? There is no climate emergency. I would love a Green to have the courage to come into the studio and debate this with me.
I'm going to get one.
I really hope you can. I'll be here.
We'll do that one. Let's do that. Albi, what do you think?
I think it shows that technology in electric cars is really coming on quite a long way. I think the average length that a car can travel at the moment is about 250 miles or something. Quadrupling that is a huge thing. Obviously, it's starting in the premium market with Mercedes, very expensive cars that people can't really afford, but eventually that technology will become more affordable for normal consumers.
Yes, but I think Albi...
It's happening.
But Lembit makes a point. Lembit makes a point.
Lembit
makes a point. He makes a point. Lembit makes a point, though. If you're in that traffic jam, you'd be very upset if you're in an electric car. Right, let's have a look. Next up, hairdressers are apparently one of the professions most at risk of being taken over by robots, whilst being a clergyman is deemed as one of the safest. That's according to scientists from the Swiss Institute of Federal Technology. They've developed an algorithm to show what jobs could easily be done by robots. So are you worried about your job being taken over by a robot, Albi? What do you do?
No, no, I'm not particularly worried about my job being taken over by a robot. I'm a financial analyst by day. But I think that, for other jobs, maybe more manual jobs, it could represent a serious problem in the future with the labour market. Where will all of those people go if and when their jobs are displaced by robots? I think we're some time away, though, from that.
Lembit.
No robot would be as faulty as me. I could simply summarise by saying
I think that's enough
these are not the droids we are looking for.
No, that's exactly right. Right, now, next story. For the past month, the Burger King in central London has gone completely meat-free. What? The branch in Leicester Square is only serving plant-based food, and whilst it will return to serving meat, thank goodness for that, leading restaurateurs have claimed that all food outlets will be meat-free in the future. Well, that's all very well. I won't be visiting. What do you think? I mean, I like my meat, but I also like vegetables. But I don't want somebody dictating whether, when I come to your restaurant, I want a selection, and I might eat a bit of meat, I might eat meat and 2 veg, I might eat anything. What about you, Albi?
I mean, you could always go to a different restaurant, to be honest. I don't think it's
But
a
it
big
says
deal.
all
that-
restaurants might.
Well, I don't think all restaurants will end up being meat-free. I think that is slightly over the top. But I think for the restaurants that do want to serve this growing demand for plant-based food, and if they do it in single restaurants, Pret's done it very successfully, I can see why it's appealing for companies.
Love it.
Demand and supply. If you don't like what they're offering, you can go somewhere else. I actually don't eat that much meat anymore, but it's only personal preference. When it comes down to it, there's a book called The Denial by Ross Clark, very interesting. It talks about dystopian future, which would have no meat available by and large, and I don't think we should be going down that path.
That's too far, isn't it? Listen, if we all just went and munched plants, then we'd have a problem with land, wouldn't we? I mean, let's face it. And I have a lot of vegans who say, no, but what about all the soy that's for animals? Yes, but then the humans will eat it, and there's more of us. Right, so on today's show, we've been asking, do you actually care about the council elections in May? And according to our Twitter poll, do you know what? It's actually replicating the turnout for the council elections, because 40% of you say yes and 60% of you say no. Right, well, I've got to say thank you so much to my fabulous panel, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankone. Albie, thank you very much. And also to former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik for joining me. Thank you, Lembit.
My pleasure.
And, of course, thank you to you at home for joining me. I'd love to see you. I'll be back tomorrow at 4. I'll leave you with the weather. Up next, it's Dubes & Co.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry for many, with some sunshine, but cloudier in the west. Let's take a look at the details. Skies are likely to be cloudy across parts of Devon and Cornwall this afternoon, with some drizzle and sea fog in the west. Further east, it'll be brighter with some warm, sunny spells. The brightness extends into southeast England, where there'll be plenty of sunny spells this afternoon, feeling warm in the sunshine with a high of 23 Celsius in London today. It's a cloudier picture for much of Wales, with some patchy drizzle over the hills. The sunshine could break through at times in the east, where it'll feel warm. After a bright start in northwest England, a little cloud will bubble up this afternoon, perhaps with 1 or 2 showers. However, most places should stay dry and warm. A bright and warm day in the northeast too, with some sunny spells. It could be cloudier at times along the coast of Northumberland. There'll be a touch of sunshine in eastern Scotland, where it'll feel pleasantly warm, but skies will be cloudier in the west. The cloud could bring a few spots of drizzle at times. Thicker cloud in Northern Ireland will bring some heavy showers this afternoon. The heavy downpours could bring hail and a few rumbles of thunder too. Showers will gradually ease this evening, leaving a dry end to the day for most and a mild evening too. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable, and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.